Here we go.
Do we
And
have to go ahead with what we had planned?
you can, what do you want to do?
Is there any, put it, to do something else in front of it? I'm sorry for the last minute request.
What would you like to do?
Maybe we should turn off the recording.
Well, I mean, here we have, we're going to deal with Whitman and Dickinson. And here was just a little snippet that we picked up. After silence, that which comes nearest to expressing the inexpressible is music. I like this because when we had 9/11, our minister was asked to say something, and he said, let's all hold hands together and be silent. And that was really, I think, the right way to handle it. It was very powerful for everybody. So
a lot of people came to him too, because he would do something non-denominational, so that the interfaith community and the non-faith community would be able to relate to it. So from what I've heard, it was like hundreds of people turning to him to help make some kind of meaning out of this meaningless horror.
yeah.
And that's how he rose to the occasion, which a lot of people were blown away by how he did it. And he said later, he just had no clue what to say. so he said that's why he decided, well, I don't know what to say. Let's go with something.
Well, yeah, or anything that he could think of saying would just not begin to do the job. Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, so after silence, that comes nearest to expressing the inexpressible is music. This is from Aldous Huxley. And the thing about this is there is some music here. For example, these are what we have here as a picture is the Voyager spacecraft went by Saturn in 1981, and you can see in incredible detail, the rings there. And so there was music that was composed and put to this to capture what's going on. It also went by Uranus. Uranus is an unusual planet in that it rotates around its axis like all of the planets do, but its axis is actually in the ecliptic plane. So it probably got smashed by something somehow, and it ended up coming there. No one knows. And then there's this.
I just want to say, not for the benefit of anybody here now, but anybody watching, that means its axis is horizontal.
Right.
And that's part of why in astrology it rules eccentricity. And another thing is its orbit is extremely elliptical. It's an oval. They all are somewhat irregular, but it's extremely oval. It's extremely elongated at two ends. So they didn't even know when they were making the first ephemerides, because it moved so slowly, how long it was going to take for it to complete a circle around the sun. And that data actually had to be updated fairly recently. I forget, I think in the 80s or 90s, they had to revise all of their projections because they hadn't realized exactly how much of an oval the orbit was. So those are two reasons why it's said to correspond to and show eccentricity.
We'll love kilter.
Again,
Pardon? Yes, a little off kilter.
Yeah. I'm gonna see if we can play this music. Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. Let's see what happens. Let me know if you can hear it. Here we go. Can you hear it?
No.
No?
No, nothing.
Nothing? Nothing? You hear it now?
Now we can. Yeah.
After many a vanished days. Many a planet by many a star, they rule with the dust of a vanished.
Might help to see the.
Yeah. Here's the words.
Saving politics never at rest, as this poor earth's pale history runs. What is it all but a trouble of hands? Into the deep of a billion. Can't hear much.
Fine.
It's done.
It's over. That's all they're doing. Okay. Okay. So anyway, this is a lot of the poetry that we're dealing with, people have put pieces of it to music, which is interesting. It gives it a whole different dimension. Okay, so did you want to do anything else with the marginalian right now?
What were you gonna go on? Keep going.
They go through.
No, go.
That was pretty much the end of it. Let your soul stand cool.
But leaves of grass.
So this is leaves of grass. Let's see if we, oops. I don't know if we're going to get. Let me get out of this. Go back here.
I'm gonna turn off my video.
Is this
I will be here.
Is this leaves of grass here? This one? No, that's not it. We'd have to go to the
I don't hear anything.
You don't.
No, I can't hear anything either.
nothing.
Okay, we have to work this out. We'd have to go to the recording.
Yeah,
We have to figure that out ahead of time.
yeah. That's the problem with some of these things is they work, you know, we can do stuff here, but then we don't know if you can hear it.
We can't tell until we broadcast it whether you will be able to
Yeah.
or not.
Yeah,
Maybe I should go on my other, on the other computer and see what happens and see if I can hear it through the computer.
Yeah,
We
well,
should do
yeah,
a little
we can do it that
rehearsal
way,
first.
yeah. So anyway, what we're gonna be doing tonight is, let me get out of the, I wanna get out of this. I'm gonna go back here to this.
Or do a new share?
So this is all of the these transcendentalists were very much plugged into Hindu Vedic manuscripts. So the one that Emerson was reading when he was 17 years old is the Mahabharata, which is this incredible epic that encompasses all kinds of families, and there's a huge war in the middle of it, and on and on. And this Mahabharata is 10 times as long as the Iliad and the Odyssey. It's gigantic. One piece of the Mahabharata is the Bhagavad Gita. So we'll come to that in a second. But the thing about this is there's the Mahabharata, and then this other one, the Ramayana. And there's a war here that they talk about, a war of succession between its two families that go at it. Bruce, have you ever read either one of these?
No,
Because it's so long, there's a lot of philosophy in it. There's a lot of discussion of the goals in life, whatever you want to talk about, story upon story, and so it goes. People have said all these things about how this was compiled maybe in the 3rd century BC, but the problem with this thing is
That says, okay.
that's when it was compiled, but it appears to be describing things that took place maybe 1,000 years earlier. It's incredible in what's going on. One of the things that's clearly described here is in the war, there's actually what appears to be a nuclear bomb that goes off. And people, of course, say, well, how could that be? There's actually a city that's been discovered. It's underwater now. It's on the Indian coast in Western India called Mohenjo-daro. And the city, what's been excavated of it, there's a number of people in it that are radioactive.
Really?
And on top of that, there are people there that they found that are just, curled up. You get that when you, like with Pompeii, when the volcano at Pompeii blew, a lot of the people in the houses just, tucked in, and then got buried by the ash. Well, here they got buried, with with all the rubble and the fallout. When Robert Oppenheimer was working at Los Alamos on the atomic bomb, leading it, Oppenheimer, when he was like 13, 14 years old, had already learned Latin and Greek as well as English. And so when he was at Los Alamos, he learned Sanskrit and he read the Bhagavad Gita. because he knew that there was a discussion in there of this bomb going off. Very few
And
people.
did he say when they were doing the tests, I am Vishnu?
Yeah, well, when he saw the test go off at Trinity in the summer of 1945, he said, I am Shiva the destroyer.
Vishnu is
Okay, that's what came to his mouth. And I'm trying to think back in time, sometime like in the 1980s, 1990s, the Brooklyn Academy of Music had a really amazing individual, Peter Brook, put on 3 plays, which collectively were called the Mahabharata. And so what Brook did was he excerpted pieces out of this incredible work and put together 3 different contiguous plays. And you could see them on successive nights, but he also offered that you could see them all in one day. So we went there on like a Saturday at 1 o'clock, and we saw 1 play, then we saw a second play, then we had a break. They gave you an hour off to go get something to eat, and then there was the third play. So you could see all of them in one day rather than waiting 3 nights. And he did it because, you know, it's an amazing work, and he wanted to capture this. And very clearly in the middle of the second play was this bomb going off, this nuclear bomb. So the key story here that takes place in all this is a struggle for a throne. You always need something like that. You know, when we had the Iliad, there was the struggle for who's going to have Helen. You know, the Trojans or the Greeks. And so there was this family here, and they had branches of the family, and there was a claim as to who was going to be first in line to inherit the throne, except there were 2 people that said they were first in line, which led to a real problem. The 2 families fought it out, and the one family ultimately that won, you know, goes through this you know, long battle here. The battle has thousands of people killed, tens of thousands. It's a huge battle. And in the middle of the battle, though, is before the battle takes place, you'll see there's a discussion which we're going to go through. But the Mahabharata ends with the death of Krishna, and that's the end of the dynasty, and everybody goes up to heaven, and this is the beginning of the Kali Yuga, the 4th and final age of mankind. Remember, we talked about these 4 yugas, these 4 ages of mankind. So let's go back now from the Mahabharata to, hold on a second, the Bhagavad Gita. And let me get this cranked up. This is now a subset of the Mahabharata, which itself is humongous. So they took 700 verses out of the Mahabharata in book 6, and that gives you the Bhagavad Gita, and it's really, the Gita is what all of the transcendentalists read. Some of them also read the Mahabharata, but they all read the Bhagavad Gita. And the thing to keep in mind here is we had this prince, Arjuna, and he had a charioteer. He's in a chariot, so his charioteer, the is called Krishna, but Krishna is actually an avatar of Vishnu. So we have Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma. So this is a pretty heavy-duty charioteer. And and at the start of the battle, Arjuna feels terrible because he looks on both sides of the field and he sees all these people that he knows, and they're going to be dead pretty soon. And he doesn't know what to do. So he asks Krishna, and there's a big dialogue, discourse that takes place here, where they go ahead and Krishna ultimately tells Arjuna to fulfill his duty to uphold his dharma. But they go through all kinds of issues far beyond just this war and this battle. And that's what was intriguing to the transcendentalists. The other thing to keep in mind here, the dialogue between Arjuna and Krishna has been interpreted as a metaphor for an immortal dialogue between the human self and God. And various people have commented on this over the years. You can make out of it whatever you want to. But Ganesh, the elephant, was apparently the writer of the Bhagavad Gita, but he was writing down what this other sage told him to write. And so it's a synthesis of all kinds of Hindu ideas about dharma, bhakti, yogis, ideal of moksha, on and on. It has a special place. A lot of Indians today will go start the day off and just read a piece of the Gita, light a candle in the shrine they have in their house. The Gita means song, and the Bhagavad side of things has been interpreted different ways. The word of God, the words of the Lord, the divine song, the celestial song. So there's no clear translation of Bhagavad Gita. But here's what it is in Sanskrit. You can read Sanskrit. And the thing is that it denotes, a high degree of respect for it. And of course, there's this other Bhagavad Gita Puran, which you shouldn't be confused with. So anyway, ask any Indian, and I think they'll tell you all about this. This is why this thing was so influential. It just covered so many different things, but a lot of Hindu philosophy, and gave a starting point for everything to lay down the discussion. So anyway.
I think it's really interesting that the council was not for peace, but for Arjuna to fulfill his destiny, that was his dharma.
Right.
And
right, he went into the battle and he killed a lot of people.
But he was very reluctant to do it. And the kind of assistant guru that I studied with at one point from Australia, the senior guru told me I had to fight my battle. She said not to win, but just for the righteousness of it. And then the assistant guru, who I did more healing work with, said she thought it was, already a huge breakthrough, that I wasn't bitter about what had already happened. And while I couldn't let it kill me, she said that wouldn't be a good outcome. But that I had to do it because I was Arjuna. That I was in that position. And you can look at situations from multiple points of view in the Hindu tradition. It's kind of Jungian in that way. You look at each character of the drama and you can identify with each of them. But she thought that I ought to be looking at Arjuna as the reluctant warrior, which I definitely was. And what the necessity was to fulfill the Dharma, which is your role and your duty. It's a hard word to translate. It doesn't have a strict translation in English. Duty is the closest one, but it's like your karmic duty and to the future. Karma is usually related to the past, but the way we can transmute karma, it said, is through giving and forgiving and fulfilling one's dharma. So it's complicated. And I just think it's really interesting that they give this kind of thought to it even now, even today. And it is the kind of like a Jungian perspective and a way of working with the metaphors of the stories. They're definitely seen as parables and metaphors. Yeah. And so it's interesting to look at the different points of view and the points of view, from which the story is told in the text. So I haven't done that assignment. My eyes were too bad. So maybe that's something I should do.
So anyway, the other thing, this seems to synthesize a number of religious traditions. So there's not one right path to spirituality, but it synthesizes and inclusively accepts multiple ways of life, harmonizing spiritual pursuits through action, which they called karma, knowledge, which is jnana, and devotion, which is bhakti. So these are the pillars of everything. Krishna's dealing with Arjuna. Remember, Krishna is Vishnu here, is a comprehensive synthesis that unifies all the different strands of Hindu thought. There's Vedic rituals, the Upanishads, the devotion to the gods. There's many gods, and then there's just philosophical insight. Plus the yogas, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. There's other yogas as well. So it tries to pull them all together, which is compelling to a lot of people. The real question here, what's the virtuous path that's necessary for spiritual liberation or go through a cycle of rebirth, this moksha, as we see, we've already seen that there can be multiple paths, even for the same person. There's no one path. And should you renounce a lifestyle to become an ascetic and go live in a cave, or should you go ahead and dedicate one life to your duty in your profession, or should you be devoted to a personal God in the revealed form of Krishna? All of these things, come up here. And the predominant trends in Hinduism, the enlightenment-based renunciation, the dharma-based normal life, household life, and the devotion-based theism. So the attempt here is to harmonize all these different paths into your life, but each person, might stress one over the other, but you should work on all of them.
And it could be at different periods in your life.
Right.
A lot of people become a lot more ascetic when they retire, when their children are grown and they reach retirement age. that for most people, that's the appropriate point to become a contemplative.
Right. So the point here is to not have an either or viewpoint, but take a both and. You want to touch on all of these things throughout your life to some extent. You've got to do the right thing because that's what you've signed up to do. Without craving for fruits or without worrying about the results or the loss or the gain, you still have to strive. And the desires and the selfishness and the craving for fruits or monies can distort you away from really true spiritual living. So that then there's many interpreters. This is India. There's no shortage of interpreters. There's a living God in every human being. So this we've seen before. We saw Jesus of Nazareth saying this, but the Hindus were saying it before he was, or he might have learned it from the Hindus since he visited India. And then there's this devoted service to this living God in everyone, but without craving personal rewards. So all is a means for spiritual development and liberation. So the teachings in the Gita different from other Indian religions that encouraged extreme austerity, self-torture, these things of walking across beds of nails and you name it. The Gita disapproved of these things because it said Krishna dwells within all beings. Torturing the body would be torturing Krishna. So even a monk should strive for inner renunciation rather than external pretensions.
That's almost verbatim what I just said.
Yeah.
Shakti Durga told me
Right,
I had to do with my legal battle.
right.
What, Marjorie? What legal battle?
Oh, sorry. I'm in this legal battle. I'm really preoccupied tonight because I have something that I have to do by
Yeah,
tomorrow.
we'll tell you about it offline.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I thought I was
it-
supposed to know about it.
I thought I had talked about it, briefly, but yeah, it's not a good thing
Yeah,
to go into.
Never mind.
It's a protracted legal battle with a lot of, we
We
could karma and justice issues, and one of my biggest supporters has been David Vita, actually. So he would have his version of it, but it's for me it's very dharmic, and that helped me shift from worrying about the karma of a situation and what did I do wrong. That it is as the previous slide just said, it's just what you have to do. It's just the right thing to do. And you may not prevail, you may, not survive, but it's just what you have to do.
This
Right.
is, this is what Marjorie signed up for when she incarnated.
Right. And it's kind of like this yoke, that the karma yoga that you just can't throw off. There's just no easy exit.
Yeah.
And I've just been trusting, well, I'll know if and when I should relinquish, the battle if I have to for our survival. But the way it's gone, it's actually been more important for our well-being to continue it. So that's become a kind of guidance for me. That so that's what the path of action. Yoga really means action. So
It means joining. It means
that's true. It doesn't mean joining.
Yeah.
It's a yoke, but it's karma yoga. You're joined to the yoke of the action that you have to take. apparently because of your past, but what I've learned is that that's bringing you to your future. And that's the pivot point that gets really interesting when you're approaching it as your dharmic duty rather than a karmic punishment.
Mhm.
It's an opportunity at the same time to grow in ways that you wouldn't have. And that was part of the advice that they were giving, that
Right.
Krishna was giving Arjuna, that this is what you have to do to have your proper growth in this lifetime. And it's taken me a really long time, more than 10 years to accept that about this stage of my life. And I do now. So
Yeah.
whatever that means, maybe it's about to end. I don't know.
So the Gita here, there's a realization. This is very Jungian. Jung felt that people had these mix of archetypes that led to them having different temperaments, different tendencies, and so forth. And because of this, this makes everyone different. And so when you go through, you see, some people are more introverted, more reflective, more intellectual. Some are very outward facing, very engaged with emotions, not, very, very quick to act. Some are very action driven. Others try things out and see what works, and it goes on and on. So all of these people have different strengths, weaknesses, different ways that they go through these things. So we have this path of knowledge, the jnana yoga, the path of devotion, the bhakti yoga, the path of action, the karma yoga, and the path of meditation, the raja yoga. So the premises here is a synthesis of all these ideas from this one Samkhya school of Hinduism. And the Gita says that none of these paths to spiritual realization is either intrinsically superior or inferior. They all converge in one and lead to the same goal. But, I would also say, I think when you get to this goal that they're talking about, the goal itself, because the people are so different, they experience or they realize the goal in different ways. And so the ones that are more intellectual would probably see something very different than the ones that are very action driven, for example, or the ones that are emotional would be very different from the ones that are very experimental. So, the same goal, the goal is amorphous to me. Okay, so I think,
Well, I just want to make
go ahead.
Well, it doesn't seem to include Buddhism.
It doesn't what, Bruce?
Doesn't include Buddhism.
No, it's Hinduism.
This is Hindu.
Yeah, I know.
The Buddha was a Hindu, but then he took a different path. Different from what we've got here.
Okay.
This is just the Hindu path.
Some
right.
people say it's parallel. It's like Judaism as opposed to Christianity. And
Right.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus was a Jew, and and on the other hand, the Jews don't acknowledge, his teachings. They don't even include any of the Gospels in their holy scripture. Yet he was a Jew.
And he meant to resuscitate and reform Judaism. He wasn't out to found something new. He was trying to kind of update it.
Yeah, it's just that the Jews didn't want to be updated. They had their own ideas. So this Bhagavad Gita is very much coming from Brahma in the terminology and everything that's here, living according to one's duty or dharma, as opposed to this ascetic liberation of avoiding all karma. And it is what it is. It had a huge impact on the transcendentalists, is all I would say. But it never really surfaces. They kind of pick up from these ideas and run with it themselves, and do it, each of them in their own way. So let's see, what do we have here?
So I like that, that part of it, and that we don't all have to follow the path of the renunciate to be good people. That's for the people who are going to be, that's their dharma, to be a renunciate. And I like this kind of attitude that you really kind of feel it. You really kind of sense what your calling is.
Yeah.
And that not everybody has the same path.
Yeah, so last time we were going through, this is Whitman with his poetry. He's just focused on poetry to get across what he sees as the right path in life. And there's there's just a series of ideas here. I celebrate myself and sing myself. This is from the poem Song of Myself. I celebrate myself and sing myself, and what I assume you shall assume. For every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you.
That was the line I was trying to think of.
Right. I loaf and invite my soul. I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. My tongue, every atom of my blood, formed from this soil, this air. Born here of parents, born here from the parents the same, and their parents the same. I, now 37 years old in perfect health, hoping to cease, not till death, breeds and schools in abeyance, retiring back a while, sufficed at what they are, but never forgotten. I harbor for good or bad, I permit to speak at every hazard, nature without check, with original energy. So he's trying to capture these ideas. The poetry, is clearly not rhyming. There's no, it's free form. There's no pentameter, hexameter, anything at all like that. No structure. So he's breaking with that sort of past because he thinks that this is the right path for him as a poet, is to express things this way.
To become, to kind of forge, as James Joyce said, right? A new,
Right.
a new art form in the smithy of my soul, as Stephen Dedalus said in Portrait of the Artist. He really wanted to found a form of strictly American poetry.
Right.
That wasn't going to be measured by English standards in particular, but European standards in general. He wanted this to be kind of a founding form of American poetry.
Yeah, remember he published it on his own in 1855, so just before the Civil War, with 12 poems. He kept adding to it and polishing it and on through 6, 7, 8, 9 different editions, and ended up with 400 of these poems here. But the whole point in this was he was trying to create the style and perfect the style to create the personality of himself as the bard of the proletariat. So he's a writer of poems, but he's also a common person. That's why, let me see if I can go back here. I think I can, yeah. See the picture here. This was taken from early on Leaves of Grass. The one over here, I think, is the final edition. So this was used in I think in the very first edition. So he's looking like a common person. He's a worker someplace.
It was kind of a persona that he assumed, though.
Yeah. He was a conscientious objector. So during the Civil War, he functioned as a medical intern, as a nurse, when they're sawing legs off.
Go back. Yeah, there's several different editions that are hugely different.
Right.
But what I wanted to say, it really shows primarily on the body and the material world. And he chose his idealized self. And those are carefully chosen words as the subject of the book. He was using his self as a floor sample. It wasn't that he was totally self-preoccupied and
Right.
narcissistic. It was his floor model, floor sample of embodiment, of being incarnated in the flesh in this life, in this particular place of America at that time during the Civil War, and dealing with all these really deep issues of constitutional rights and the rights of the individual. So it was as I said, it was a persona that he employed to make the statement that he was just using himself as his instrument of perception in a kind of early, before we had something from Aldous Huxley, when he's talking about the doors of perception, that's what he had to work with. Those were his eyes. It wasn't that it was just about him. And that's what he meant when he said, every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. He was trying to be every man really hard. He was really trying to be a spokesman for the everyday people.
Yeah, and we touched on this. There's a lot of discussion of central players. So the book was banned in various places for various periods of time. But it is what it is. I'm trying to think.
And a lot of it was very, upfront about being homosexual, which was pretty controversial at the time.
Oh yeah, it was for a long time. You can see here's all the different sections in the later edition. The first edition had nothing. It was just these 12 poems. And then what goes with it, we ran through Song of Myself briefly, but it's really nature without check and with the original energy. So the other thing, there's a poem called Drum Taps, and Whitman went to the newspapers. He was in New York City during the Civil War, and they were dealing with the Civil War battles. So he picked out phrases there for his poem on drum taps, and used other sources. He wasn't. He said, "Look, I don't know everything, and these other people have good ideas, so I'm gonna just borrow them." there was a significant amount of urbanization occurring after the Civil War, as all these cities started to grow. And he was, by being there in New York, he was also writing about this and what the impact this has on people. But the title metaphor, which is grass, it deals with a much more pastoral vision of rural life, and so be it.
But
Yeah.
Brooklyn had a lot of farms still at that time.
Yeah. You had what's the Prospect Park, the big park in Brooklyn, and Central Park went in, that had all kinds of nature to it. Yeah, the Song of Myself, it goes back to what Marjorie said about Whitman being the narrator, but Whitman being the focus, being the every person, the every man. And so he's trying to relieve all of these social problems and private problems that people have, but using affirmative cultural images. This is a great period for the United States after the Civil War. There's a huge amount of growth, and people are can do, and let's go do this and let's go do that, building railroads everywhere, putting in telegraphs and steel mills, and you name it. So if anything, people compare this Leaves of Grass to something that Homer would have done if Homer lived when Whitman did. The other thing about it is, which I don't buy into, is the phrenologist here. I'm trying to remember, what in the world does phrenology mean? Do you remember?
As I recall, it's about the shape of your skull,
That's what I thought too.
and there's different interpretations.
Yeah, different bumps on your skull lead to different personality traits, and so you can be a giver of laws and be a poet at the same time. Anyway, it was something that Whitman believed in, and he liked it, so that just mention it. There's a huge legacy with this Leaves of Grass. You just find it everywhere. There was a Little Blue Book series that I think was used in a lot of schools in the United States, and that introduced Whitman to all kinds of people. During World War II, a lot of Whitman's poetry was distributed to soldiers in the belief that celebrating the American way would inspire the people that were protecting it. His work has been claimed in the name of racial equality. Many people believe the Civil War was fought to achieve racial equality, to get rid of slavery, which was intrinsically racist, and so it goes. And then in 1970, this United States Information Agency distributed this all over the place outside the United States. So it's got a lot of play wherever it goes. So let's see, I think I have here, hold on a second.
I believe Langston Hughes became
Hold on a second.
a big advocate for it.
Yeah, no, I think he did. I'm trying to see, is this, I don't know which, let me try this one. It says poetry. Oh, yeah, these are a bunch of YouTube videos.
Song of
videos.
Myself.
Come again?
It's the Song of Myself. Is that what you're on?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, so here was,
We weren't reading the Marginalian when we did this the first time.
yeah, this was done earlier. Hold on, let me go back up here. Here is what we left out of the Song of Myself. The lunatic is carried at last to the asylum, a confirmed case. He'll never sleep anymore as he did in the cot in his mother's bedroom. The Jour printer with gray head and gaunt jaws works at his case. He turns his quid of tobacco while his eyes blur with the manuscript. The malformed limbs are tied to the surgeon's table. What is removed drops horribly in a pail. The quadroon girl is sold at the auction stand. The drunkard nods by the barroom stove. So these are all, images that are, in many ways very powerful. The one that comes up many times is I sing the body electric. The science fiction author Ray Bradbury used that in a short story, except he was doing it for a 1962 episode of Twilight Zone. I don't know if anyone remembers Twilight Zone. Rod Serling.
I do.
Rod Serling actually lived in Westport, Connecticut. And he back in the day in 62, he signed up to do the television had 39 episodes to have a season from September to June. And then you had 13 weeks off. So a total of 52 weeks. And then you started over again. So Rod Serling did 39 episodes every week. He just wrote these things. And Ray Bradbury wrote one of them, This Body Electric. The thing about it is what Ray Bradbury did was he had people running around, but at some point they popped open the cage, the doors on these people, and they were all robots. So that was, I sing the body electric is he's singing about all these robots running around looking like people. That was the Twilight Zone story. And then there was a band here, Jazz Fusion. There was
The band was Weather Report.
right, the band was Weather Report, and their second album was I Sing the Body Electric. So they liked this. And then there was a 1980 film Fame, where the students sang a song inspired by the poem at their graduation. And then I remember this in the movie Bull Durham, which took place in Durham, North Carolina, with the Durham Bulls, the minor league baseball team. Susan Sarandon read the poem I Sing the Body Electric to one of the key characters in the movie. So it gets a lot of play, as you can see. He got something. I'm just wondering if we went to YouTube. Let's see if we can go to YouTube. This works. Can you hear this?
W-2 and file your simple tax return with both Fed and state for free. See if you qualify.
Can you hear this?
Yeah, I can hear the tax
Sing the Body
returns.
Electric.
Can
Walt
you-
Whitman, 1819 to
Can you hear this?
1892.
Yes.
Grass, 1900.
It's not that long, so
I sing the body electric. The armies of those I love engirth me, and I engirth them. They will not let me off till I go with them, respond to them, and discorrupt them, and charge them full with the charge of the soul. Was it doubted that those who corrupt their own bodies conceal themselves, and if those who defile the living are as bad as they who defile the dead? And if the body does not do as much as the soul, and if the body were not the soul, what is the soul? 2. The love of the body of man or woman balks account. The body itself balks account. That of the male is perfect, and that of the female is perfect. The expression of the face balks account, but the expression of a well-made man appears not only in his face, it is in his limbs and joints also. It is curiously in the joints of his hips and wrists. It is in his walk, the carriage of his neck, the flex of his waist and knees. Dress does not hide him. The strong, sweet, supple quality he has strikes through the cotton and flannel. To see him pass conveys as much as the best poem, perhaps more. You linger to see his back, and the back of his neck and shoulder side. The sprawl and fullness of babes, the bosoms and heads of women, the folds of their dress, their style as we pass in the street, the contour of their shape downwards. The swimmer naked in the swimming bath, seen as he swims through the transparent green shine, or lies with his face up and rolls silently to and fro in the heave of the water. The bending forward and backward of rowers in rowboats, the horseman in his saddle, girls, mothers, housekeepers, in all their performances, the group of laborers seated at noontime with their open dinner kettles and their wives waiting. The female soothing a child, the farmer's daughter in the garden or coward. The young fellow hoeing the corn, the sleigh driver guiding his 6 horses through the crowd. The wrestle of wrestlers, 2 apprentice boys, quite grown, lusty, good-natured, native-born, out on the vacant lot at sundown. After work, the coats and caps thrown down, the embrace of love and resistance, the upper hold and the under hold, the hair rumpled over and blinding the eyes. The march of firemen in their own costumes, the play of masculine muscle through clean setting trousers and waist straps. The slow return from the fire, the pause when the bell strikes suddenly again, and the listening and the alert. The natural, perfect, varied attitudes, the bent head,
Oops.
Oops.
love, pass freely, and at the mother's breast with a little child, swim with the partners, wrestle with wrestlers, march in line with the firemen, and pause, listen, and count. 3. I know a man, a common farmer, the father of 5 sons, and in them were the fathers of sons, and in them were the fathers of sons. This man was of wonderful vigor, calmness, beauty of person, the shape of his head, the pale yellow and white of his hair and beard, and the immeasurable meaning of his black eyes, the richness and breadth of his manner. These I used to go and visit him to see. He was wise also. He was 6 feet tall. He was over 80 years old. His sons were massive, clean, bearded, tan-faced, handsome. They and his daughters loved him. All who saw him loved him. They did not love him by allowance. They loved him with personal love. He drank water only. The blood showed like scarlet through the clear brown skin of his face. He was a frequent gunner and fisher. He sailed his boat himself. He had a fine one presented to him by a ship joiner. He had fowling pieces presented to him by men that loved him. When he went with his 5 sons and many grandsons to hunt or fish, he would pick him out as the most beautiful and vigorous of the gang. He would wish long and long to be with him. You would wish to sit by him in the boat, that you and he might touch each other. 4. I have perceived that to be with those I like is enough. To stop in company with the rest at evening is enough. To be surrounded by beautiful, curious, breathing, laughing flesh is enough. To pass among them or touch anyone, or rest my arm ever so lightly around his or her neck for a moment. What is this then? I do not ask any more delight. I swim in it as in a sea. There is something in staying close to men and women, and looking on them, and in the contact and odor of them that pleases the soul well. All things please the soul, for these please the soul well. 5. This is the female form. A divine nimbus exhales from it from head to foot. It attracts with fierce, undeniable attraction. I am drawn by its breath as if I were no more than a helpless vapor. All falls aside but myself in it. Books, art, religion, time, the visible and solid earth, the atmosphere and the clouds, and what was expected of heaven or feared of hell are now consumed. Mad filaments, ungovernable shoots play out of it, the response likewise ungovernable. Hair, bosom, hips, bend of legs, negligent falling hands, all diffused, mine too diffused, ebb stunned by the flow, and flow stunned by the ebb, love flesh swelling and deliciously aching, limitless limpid jets of love, hot and enormous, quivering jelly of love, white blow and delirious juice, bridegroom night of love, working surely and softly into the prostrate dawn, undulating into the willing and yielding day, lost in the cleave of the clasping and sweet-fleshed day. This is the nucleus. After the child is born of woman, the man is born of woman. This is the bath of birth. This is the merge of small and large, and the outlet again. Be not ashamed, women. Your privilege encloses the rest, and is the exit of the rest. You are the gates of the body, and you are the gates of the soul. The female contains all qualities and tempers them. She is in her place and moves with perfect balance. She has all things duly veiled. She is both passive and active. She is to conceive daughters as well as sons, and sons as well as daughters. As I see my soul reflected in nature, as I see through a mist, one with inexpressible completeness and beauty, see the bent head and arms folded over the breast. The female I see. 6. The male is not less the soul, no more. He too is in his place. He too is all qualities. He is action and power. The flesh of the known universe is in him. Scorn becomes him well, and appetite and defiance becomes him well. The wildest, largest passions, bliss that is utmost, sorrow that is utmost, become him well. Pride is for him. The full spread pride of man is calming and excellent to the soul. Knowledge becomes him. He likes it always. He brings everything to the test of himself. Whatever the survey, whatever the sea and the sail, he strikes soundings at last, only here. Where else does he strike soundings except here? The man's body is sacred, and the woman's body is sacred. No matter who it is sacred. Is it a slave? Is it one of the dull-faced immigrants just landed on the wharf? Each belongs here or anywhere, just as much as the well-off, just as much as you. Each has his or her place in the procession. All is a procession. The universe is a procession with measured and beautiful motion. Do you know so much yourself that you call the slave or the dull-faced ignorant? Do you suppose you have a right to a good sight, and he or she has no right to a sight? Do you think matter has cohered together from its diffuse float, and the soil is on the surface, and water runs and vegetation sprouts, for you only and not for him and her? 7. A man's body at auction. I help the auctioneer. The sloven does not half know his business. Gentlemen, look on this wonder. Whatever the bids of the bidders, they cannot be high enough for it. For it the globe lay preparing quintillions of years, without one animal or plant, for it revolving, cycles truly and steadily rolled. And this had the all-baffling brain, in it and below it, the makings of heroes. Examine these limbs, red, black, or white. They are so cunning in tendon and nerve, they shall be stripped, that you may see them. Exquisite senses, life-lit eyes, pluck, volition, flakes of breast muscle, pliant backbone and neck, flesh not flabby, good-sized arms and legs, and wonders within there yet. Within there runs blood, the same old blood, the same red running blood. There swells and jets a heart. There are all passions, desires, reachings, aspirations. Do you think they are not there because they are not expressed in parlors and lecture rooms? This is not only one man. This is the father of those who shall be fathers in their turns. In him the start of populous states and rich republics, of him countless immortal lives, with countless embodiments and enjoyments. How do you know who shall come from the offspring of his offspring through the centuries? Who might you find you have come from yourself, if you could trace back through the centuries? 8. A woman's body at auction. She too is not only herself, she is the teeming mother of mothers. She is the bearer of them and shall grow and be mates to the mothers. Have you ever loved the body of a woman? Have you ever loved the body of a man? Your father, where is your father? Your mother, is she living? Have you been much with her? And has she been much with you? Do you not see that these are exactly the same to all, in all nations and times all over the earth? If anything is sacred, the human body is sacred, and the glory and sweet of a man is the token of manhood untainted, and a man or woman a clean, strong, firm fibered woman is beautiful as the most beautiful face. Have you seen the fool that corrupted his own live body, or the fool that corrupted her own live body? For they do not conceal themselves, and cannot conceal themselves. 9. O my body, I dare not desert the likes of you and other men and women, nor the likes of the parts of you. I believe the likes of you are to stand or fall with the likes of the soul, and that they are the soul. I believe the likes of you shall stand or fall with my poems, and that they are poems. Man's, woman's, child's, youth's, wife's, husband's, mother's, father's, young man's, young women's poems. Head, neck, hair, ears, drop and tympan of the ears. Eyes, eye fringes, iris of the eye, eyebrows, and the waking or sleeping of the eyelids. Mouth, tongue, lips, teeth, roof of the mouth, jaws and the jaw hinges, nose, nostrils of the nose and the partition, cheeks, temples, forehead, chin, throat, back of the neck, neck slew, strong shoulders, manly beard, scapula, hind shoulders, and the ample side round of the chest. Upper arm, armpit, elbow socket, lower arm sinews, arm bones, wrist and wrist joints, hand, palm, knuckles, thumb, forefinger, finger balls, finger joints, fingernails, broad breast front, curling hair of the breast, breastbone, breast side, ribs, belly, backbone, joints of the backbone, hips, hip sockets, hip strength, inward and outward round, man balls, man root, strong set of thighs, well carrying the trunk above, leg fibers, knee pan, upper leg, under leg, ankles, instep, football, toes, toe joints, and the heel. All attitudes, all the shape lines, all the belongings of my or your body, or of anyone's body, male or female. The lung sponges, the stomach sac, the bowels sweet and clean, the brain in its folds inside the skull frame, sympathies, heart valves, palate valves, sexuality, maternity, womanhood, and all that is a woman, and the man that comes from woman, the womb, the teats, nipples, breast milk, tears, laughter, weeping, love looks, love perpetrations and risings. The voice, articulation, language, whispering, shouting aloud, food, drink, pulse, digestion, sweat, sleep, walking, swimming, poise on the hips, leaping, reclining, embracing, arm curving and tightening. The continual changes of the flex of the mouth and around the eyes, the skin, the sunburnt shade, freckles, hair, the curious sympathy one feels when feeling with the hand the naked meat of the body, the circling rivers, the breath and breathing in and out, the beauty of the waist and thence of the hips and thence downward toward the knees, the thin red jellies within you or within me, the bones and the marrow in the bones, the exquisite realization of health. Oh, I say, these are not the parts and poems of the body only, but of the soul. Oh, I say now, these are the soul.
So there you have it.
I Sing the Body Electric by Walt Whitman.
Hold on. I gotta
I
figure out,
sing the body
I gotta
electric.
figure out how to
No.
stop.
The images of those I love engulf
Here we are.
me, and I.
Okay, I got it. So there we have just a taste of Whitman. And now we've gone through all of this. This is all our website. We'll go to Emily Dickinson. We're going to start here with this marginalia. So one of the things that Emily Dickinson did was she collected flowers. And she was very systematic about this, very diligent. So let's just take a look at what we have here.
I think we shared this. before.
Did we do this? Did we do this last time?
Not last time, but I think the like in September or whatever.
We
started.
might have. Okay.
I think we did.
Anyway, we'll just do a little review.
I
What's going?
remember seeing Emily Dickinson's flowers a little bit.
Yeah, that what's going on here. This is basically the only picture that can be verified to be. It's a daguerreotype of Emily Dickinson. I think it's just when she went to Mount Holyoke. She
Where
lived.
We
Go
can't
ahead.
see your screen. We just
Oh,
see.
oh, I see. I'm sorry. Hold on, hold on. I knew there was something I was missing. Here we go. Okay, this is again off our website. Emily Dickinson's Herbarium. So what she did was,
And let's give full credit to the marginalian. for
yeah, this is the
putting
marginalia.
This article together.
This is her picture in 1847. The only picture anyone knows of Emily Dickinson that can be verified. I think she died in 1888. She was born, I guess, in 1830. So, you know, so it goes. So you know, what happened here was she started studying botany at the age of 9 and assisted her mother in the garden at age 12. But it was only when she began attending Mount Holyoke, around the time that the only picture we know was taken of her, that she started to really get into botany. And so the founder of Mount Holyoke was a botanist herself and encouraged all of the girls to collect, study, and preserve the local flowers. So Dickinson did this. And they had an exhibition at the Morgan Library in New York City of what she did. She collected 424 distinct flowers, all from the Amherst region, which she celebrated as beautiful children of spring, arranged with remarkable sensitivity to scale and visual cadence across 66 pages in a large leather brown album. The slim paper labels punctuate the specimens like enormous dashes inscribed with the names of the plants, sometimes colloquial, sometimes Linnaean, all handwritten by Emily Dickinson. So here's an example of a page. Okay, you can see here's the scripts here where she's labeling the different flowers. Here's another page, so you can see what's going on. Here's yet another page. So apparently this thing is now buried in the bowels of Harvard in the rare book library. You can't examine it because it's so fragile, and so you can't. I think I looked on this on Amazon. It's like $7,000 to get a facsimile copy of this book, if you wanted to get one. So hopefully Harvard has got this online now. I did not check.
I found it.
You did?
They,
Okay.
they scanned all of this.
Right, right.
They made some very high quality scans. And I actually downloaded it.
Right. So here we have, you know, on the very first page, the very first flower, Emily had the jasminum or jasmine, the tropical flower, would come to mean passion to her as a woman. So, and it goes from there through the rest of this. She liked to think that she saw New England was, although Puritan in her disciplined upbringing, profoundly attracted to the foreign, and especially to the semi-tropical or tropical climes that she read about in Harper's and Atlantic Monthly magazine. All these places like Santo Domingo, Brazil, Potosi, Zanzibar, Italy. So domesticating jasmine in the cold climate of New England was great. It gave her this feeling of having gone to these other places. I don't think she ever left Amherst, and I don't think he even went to Boston. She went to Holyoke, which is, I don't know, 10 miles away at the most. And so it goes, and you can see 424 of these.
But it is really
Plants.
well laid out and composed. And
Yeah.
so orderly and
Yeah,
meticulous.
she loved nature, obviously. And collecting these different flowers, would have taken, she's outside a lot, running over hill and dale.
Somebody who really paid attention.
Oh, is this it? The Harvard Libraries? Yeah, here they are. They're all online here at the Harvard Library. So you can go there yourself and look at these things. Okay.
But
So
go to the animation that we found. And
go to the animation of,
go back to, yeah, there.
hold on, I'm on a screen share. Go here, yeah.
Scroll up.
What am I looking for?
There's should be a link to the animation where I forget her name, this woman put one of her lovely poems about nature, specifically flowers. No. To music. I thought it was in the up there. Don't you remember it?
Yeah, I remember what you're talking about. I just don't, was it here? Was it in this?
I don't remember exactly. That's why I'm asking you to go up and look.
This is the start.
There's an animated song
Here
there.
we go.
That was interesting.
Where, how do we,
Right. Okay.
how do we animate it?
Go down.
Okay.
Thank you. That's part of it. Here,
Here it is, okay.
and the poem is below.
Okay, so we'll put, and everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay, so here we go.
A flower and casually glance would cause one scarcely to suspect the minor circumstance. The system in the the just thing that you stay the crowd and be great nature. Not to disappoint, await that day to be away is profound. Response.
I wanted to play it again.
The other thing you can see is how different this is from Whitman.
They're kind of opposites in a way. She's so microscopic in her view. But they made, this is like a facsimile of her handwriting based on the samples on those labels for the notes. And all of the flowers and the creatures in the animation are taken from that book of her
Right.
herbarium.
Herbarium.
And from the scans of it and morphed into that animation. But I thought for me it's worth just reading the words. Well,
Oh, I think you started it up.
I tried to.
No, skip.
No, okay, wait.
Do it, dear. Restart there.
Well, it's resolved to be a flower and casually glance would cause one scarcely to suspect the minor circumstance. Assisting in the so but just think about you with the sky, the clouds, and the great nature. Not to disappoint, await her that day. To be a flower is profound. Whisper and see.
And that hand makes me think so much of.
Do a skip. And then I think you can go back.
Go back and then
Go back and
stop.
stop it.
It's just like the hand in Veritas, in Hildegard's.
Hildegard von Bingen had a book called Veriditas or Greenness. So this is who Emily Dickinson was when she was a student at Holyoke. And I'm going to try and get out of this and go back to our resource page. Hold on a second.
So two American Unitarian mystics who never met, but Thoreau knew them both. Or what's his name? Emerson knew them both.
Yeah.
And Emerson really encouraged Dickinson as far as he knew her work, but most of it was secret. But he really encouraged Whitman. He really, adored Whitman and endorsed him in a way that got him a lot more readership than he would have had otherwise. So he was but I don't think he ever really knew the extent, nobody knew the extent of what she was up to, you know, in her room. But Whitman made her uncomfortable, you know, because he did everything so large. He was kind of
Right.
larger than life, and she was so, you know, focused on each hair on each leg of the bee, you know, and the microscopic detail. But they were both, I think, really just keyed in a very natural way to the unity and the wonder of nature and life. He had these wacky inventories that he just loved to rattle off. I think he must have spent a long time putting them together.
Right.
And he was into the vastness and very interested in human life, whereas she's more interested, I think, in phenomena and nature itself. And she kind of disapproved of him. You know, I don't know if it was because of the sexual content, and as we touched on a couple of weeks ago, they were both gay or bisexual. And I think that's part of what, you know, added to their outsiders perspective that they both had. But they both had these incredibly rich inner lives, and you know, did this really deep contemplation and produced this unique art that they were just driven to do, and they weren't really being schooled by anybody. They just kind of created it in their own vacuums.
Yeah, I think as we'll see here, there's only like one poem of Dickinson's that it was ever published in her lifetime. And it was only after she died that they found like over 1,000 poems that she'd written. They had no idea of the poet that she was. She, you know, she had all kinds of passion and talent. There was a huge family feud, especially when they discovered all these poems that Dickinson had written over who gets the money, you know, who owns them, who's going to get rich. And she herself was, again, very introverted. She just brushed off invitations to go do anything. And she's in this town, you know, which is a little New England college town. You know, just, you know, she really stayed at home a lot. She didn't go anywhere. So there's a whole bunch of things. Hope is the thing with feathers. Okay, because I could not stop for death. Before I got my eye put out, the crash course on Emily Dickinson poetry. These are all available here on YouTube, etc. And then there's this bunch of documentaries, including some ideas on how she actually writes a poem. Her poems, unlike Whitman's, are relatively short. They're all you know, what, 20 lines at the most. But
Yeah,
they're
a lot are like half a dozen long.
yeah, but they're incredibly well crafted, in my opinion. That it's just that no one knew what she was doing. She was cranking out these poems regularly. You know, every week there's another poem or two.
She sent a bunch to a newspaper editor who thought that her stylistic choices were, you know, some kind of deficiency that he ought to correct. So he started editing them. And I think that was incredibly disappointing to her, you know, that he thought she should make them more normal. Whereas, she was deliberately using dashes and not other punctuation and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think that was very wounding. For
yeah,
her.
oh yeah, no, yeah, she's clearly very sensitive, but she's a very strong person. So the
Right.
founder of Holyoke, Mary Lyon, was very active in religious revival activity and was very much opposed to science. And Emily Dickinson loved science. She just went up against the headmaster, the head of the school. And here's an example with this poem. Faith is a fine invention when gentlemen can see, but microscopes are prudent in an emergency. She just whipped this off. So when the mistress pressed the students to be saved, Emily didn't go along with this. And so the other girls desired only to be good. How could I wish to say with my sincerity, but I fear and never can. So she was 3 categories at the school: the saved, the hopeful, and a remnant of about 30 that are no hope. So Emily was put into the 30 that were no hope. And the mermaids in the basement came out to look at me. That's how she ends this poem here. She invited a man from Boston to be her mentor, but he was the one that Margie was talking about, who tried to edit what she was doing, and on and on.
That's a Higginson.
She couldn't stand this, but he was, he thought he was corresponding with an apologetic, self-effacing spinster, and was puzzled to find himself drained of nerve power after he went out to visit her in 1870, because she simply overpowered him. Her intellect was so much stronger than anything he'd ever run into. He didn't know what to do. He was unable to describe the creature he found. She had smooth bands of red hair, no good features. She'd been deferential and exquisitely clean in her white pique dress and blue crocheted shawl. And then she proved surprisingly articulate, said a lot of strange things from which Higginson deduced a really abnormal life. I started early, took my dog, and visited the sea. The mermaids in the basement came out to look at me. Well, that's one way to do it. So there was a divide between the people that Emily wished to know and those she didn't. And she couldn't endure social talk instead of truth, piety instead of the soul's superior instance. She was very direct. She would have been disconcerted if she did not simulate conventionality. This was stinging work, but a more threatening challenge deeper below the surface fired the volcanoes and earthquakes in her poem, an event, as she put it, that struck my ticking through. So something in her life has so far remained sealed. The poems tease the reader about it, her almost overwhelming temptation to tell. I want to open up the possibility of an unsentimental answer. If true, it would explain the conditions of her life, her seclusion and refusal to marry. And once we know what it is, it'll obviously be why it was buried and why its lava jolts out from time to time through the crater of her buckled lips. So
There's thought that she was epileptic,
yeah,
like Hildegard.
right. Hildegard had, but that's where Hildegard had these,
The visions.
yeah, she downloaded whatever. My loss, by sickness? Was it a loss, or that ethereal gain one earns by measuring the grave, then measuring the sun? So you can see she doesn't think like, many people would think. Sickness was always there. There's a cough that's mentioned. She had trouble with her eyes. The sickness can be violent. She speaks of convulsions or throes. The body's dropping. I felt a funeral in my brain, and I dropped down and down, and so forth. That's who she is. There's a grand mal, some sort of seizure, which is a slight swerve in the pathway of the brain that prompts the seizure. And she might have had that. No one knows. And then this falling sickness, which is what epilepsy used to be known, was associated with hysteria, masturbation, syphilis, impairment of the intellect, leading to insanity. It was unnameable, particularly when it struck a woman. In the case of men, secrecy was less strict, and fame in a few, Caesar, Muhammad, Dostoevsky, overrode the stigma, but a woman had to bury herself in lifelong silence. So it's remarkable that Dickinson developed a voice from within that silence, one with a volcanic power to abide its time. So she's taking these drugs, and her nephew also turned out to be afflicted. You wonder, they just had no idea what to do. They just threw them all together in this one category, or it could have been, genetic. They could have been related to one another genetically, and this is what it was. But her nephew Ned had an epileptic fit, and roughly 80 year. No one knows how many Emily Dickinson suffered. There are lots of different forms of epilepsy. But she did drop a lot of crockery and plates and cups and so forth. And maybe that was what was going on. But she coped with all this stuff, and ended up coming up with scenes with revolver and gun, and being in her household with her father and her sister, and she saved herself from the anarchy of this condition and put it to use to write poetry. The mystery the poet was not to tell continues to this day to be encased in claims put out by opposed camps who have their own views. And after death, the feud came out in the open. Who was to own her unpublished papers? Who had the right to them? And so a lot of this has to do with the battle. I'm just going to skip over this. You can look at it on your own. But there was a huge fight that took place in the family, and this other woman entered, Mabel, who seduced her brother, and the rest is history. And all of this to get the poems. And it went on for multiple generations. In fact, in the 1950s, it was still going on over who owned what. But she had this body of work, and was again very much in the same spirit as Whitman, but pursuing her own path. Let me see what this says. In her late 40s and 50s, she turned to a fierce Judge Lord of the Massachusetts Supreme Court. But though she thought of his touch at night, interrupted her writing to anticipate his weekly letter and played up to the common character he assigned as Emily Jumbo. Comic. She would not marry him. Epileptics were not supposed to marry. Some American states had passed laws against this, etc. So she found love, spiritual quickening, and immortality all on her own terms. One model remained, Wuthering Heights, which, is a model. Dickinson was a moral being, a product of upright New England, and she grasped the potential destructiveness to her sanity of the bomb in her bosom, and she witnessed the eruption of the feud during her lifetime. Another secret within the family. She refers repeatedly to a secret existence, primarily her poetry, that must be seen in terms of New England individualism, the ethos of Emerson, of self-reliance in its fullest bloom, that eludes label. It's more awkward and less lovable than English eccentricity, and it's more dangerous, in fact, as Dickinson owned when she said, "My life had stood a loaded gun." So here we have, you know it as you know, 'tis noon by glory, as you do by the sun by glory. These are the words that really transformed her into her self-realization, her change of consciousness. Maybe she achieved enlightenment at this point, who knows? And despite the pressure from her family and all the townspeople in Amherst, she stubbornly resisted organized Christianity, but had her own continual mystical communion with what she liked to call eternity, a concept beyond the associations of the word God. Hers was a conversion to the world of the spirit by nature herself, action through the faculty of intuition. This is the notion she held in common with the transcendentalists in these of her poems. By intuition, mighty things assert themselves, and not by terms. I'm midnight, need the midnight say. I'm sunrise, need the majesty. Omnipotence had not a tongue. His lisp is lightning, and the sun. His conversation with sea. How shall you know? Consult your eye. So, Whitman and Dickinson give you these two different contrasts here. Both had a lot of impact on people. Whitman was more the promoter, but the beliefs and ideas that here were all shaped by history, by Plato, by the teaching of Confucius, the Sufis, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, the Buddhists, and at the bottom there's a monoism holding to the unity of the world. Monism, holding to the unity of the world and God and the immanence of God in the world. So because of this indwelling of divinity, everything in the world is a microcosm contained within itself, all the laws and the meanings of existence. Each soul of each individual is identical with the soul of the world and latently contains all that the world contains. Man may fulfill its potential, his divine potentialities, either through rapt mystical state in which the divine is infused into the human, or through coming into contact with the truth, beauty, and goodness embodied in nature and originating in the oversoul.
That was really Emerson's term for God.
Right.
Was the oversoul.
And so it goes. Why don't we? I'll send this out, and you can look at this. But you can see the poetry is very different. But again, they took different paths, Emerson and Whitman, and yet they, to me, seem to arrive. Dickinson and Whitman. she's got these great lines. I taste a liquor never brewed. Hope is the thing with feathers. This thing wraps around the wrong way. Success is counted sweetest. A bird came down the walk. Wild nights, because I could not stop for death. I felt a funeral in my brain. My life had stood a loaded gun. I'm nobody. Who are you? Tell all the truth, but tell it slant. So you can see this is not someone, she just thinks outside the box repeatedly, and that's what makes her who she is. Any questions or comments?
Wow.
They're amazing people,
Yeah.
and they did it their own way.
I love the way you see their particular intelligence, the way it operates in their work. You see this view, they each had a.
They're very much attracted to nature, but in different ways. They come away with looking at the same thing. They come away with something different, each of them.
But they both seem to have this incredible sense of wonderment at the miracle of life and being alive as a human. That I just think is really rich and uplifting, and it reminds me of like the psychedelicness of the whole thing. That's just really what comes to mind. I think they both had such an acute sense.
And we can clearly spend much more time on this, but we've got other things we wanted to survey, so onward and upward. Patty, any questions? You're muted. Okay.
No, it's just, it's so big,
No, these are great people.
If you could capture Whitman and Dickinson and kind of, if you said, this is what I feel when I read them, what would that be?
For me, I feel gratitude at being reminded of the wonder of the whole thing, just the whole. I became very depressed at the age of 14, and that stayed with me really until 30 or more. And I wish I had encountered them, because I think it's impossible to be depressed when you see that point of view of just what it is to be alive.
Every minute, every second, they just enjoy it. They're savoring it, but they're doing it in their own way, very different for each of them.
But I think they're both pointing out, they're both kind of saying, look, this is the miracle. This is what it is to be alive and to be human in this lifetime, to be able to think about history and politics and all of that.
They could have both
And
been
then-
enlightened, okay?
Right.
And so they can sense even greater reality than other people. But that was just all the more compelling for them.
Everything seems so vibrant and alive to their eyes. That's one of the things that I take away. They're both so acutely sensitive to
the world around them, to everything. They're articulate.
right.
They're trying to capture what in the world is this joy, this rapture that they experience, and the words just keep coming out of each of them.
It's a celebration. I guess that's the word I would use. It's almost like a mass to me.
Mm.
Their way of experiencing.
Yeah.
But it's not a celebration of some remote symbolic other thing. It's like, well, this is what the mass is celebrating.
Yeah.
It's all to me, it's all divine, and just like Whitman just kind of caresses everything with his observations. You could just see how he just admires. He tried to throw women in there too, but he just celebrates the curve of a man's arm, or the spread of his back. He just loves looking at men. He just loves appreciating them. And what's wrong with that? It's still, I think, a little uncomfortable for us culturally, but he makes it seem so natural.
Yeah.
And
Whereas Emily Dickinson is, very introverted, just
right.
staying away from things like this, but still has incredible emotions and intensity.
Yeah, and I think very intense passion. And some poems show it more than others. But they both lived this life of, it was a discipline, it was a practice.
Yeah.
So for me, it's an example of a kind of Western mysticism as opposed to an Eastern mysticism. And maybe they had some slight, difference. They use new language nowadays for people who are, neurologically unusual that I don't quite remember, but
Neurodiverse.
that's it. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
My daughter works, that's her job. She works with neurodiverse artists.
Right. And
Oh.
maybe that's why they were so sensitized. But everything's just like 1,000 watts for them. It's not I don't think they're seeing it the way we see it. But I wish I had encountered that sense of aliveness and joy in it all. I used to actually find springtime kind of revolting and depressing.
Oh,
Isn't that weird? Because it was like, here we go again. So for me, that would have been such an antidote because I always was wondering, well, what is human life for? What is it about? Because, birds fly, fish swim,
yeah.
whatever, tigers hunt. What do we do? What's the human activity supposed to be? And
You keep coming back to the word joy.
yeah, and what I finally came to was creativity, that we're meant to be creating art. And that could also be science, in the right hand, scientific inquiry is extremely creative. And that seems to be what sets us apart and what's natural for us. But I always felt completely blocked. I felt completely locked out of that I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But to answer your own question,
Thank you.
what do you think of? What does it mean to you?
Well, I think you covered it.
Oh.
It's
Well, yeah, I mean, you can go onto YouTube and look at some of these things, and there are people reading their different poems, and you'll see how rich all this is. So that's all I would say.
A lot
go
of,
back to the source.
a lot of Dickinson's poems have been set to music.
Yeah.
In very interesting ways,
Her poems are short,
right?
so that it's easy to come up with relatively short music, whereas Whitman, you know, many of these things are quite long.
You can only take an excerpt.
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah,
Yeah. So,
Whitman's a little dense.
yeah. Okay. We will see
Well, thank
everybody
you.
next week. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Bye-bye. Happy New
Bye-bye.
Year.
In this calendar.